Welcome to the Morning Walk with Murty Digital Stroll.
Yes, welcome in, everyone.
I am stepping in today as the architect of Antaryami, and I'm sitting here alongside the mentor of the Antaryami VA Academy. And, well, for you listening, we are looking at this incredibly bizarre, almost global paradox today.
Oh, it really is a paradox.
Right, because we have this highly secure, incredibly stable, infinitely customizable operating system, and it is available to every single person on Earth for absolutely zero cost.
Zero. Completely free.
Free. So why are billions of us still, happily paying money to be locked inside a corporate walled garden?
That right there, that is the defining friction of digital migration. And we are bringing out the Digital Prism framework today for this Gurukul session. We want to extract the legacy code of human-computer interaction for you.
Exactly. And just to give you all a roadmap, we are looking at a stack of sources today.
Okay.
Primarily, there's this really deeply insightful article by a software engineer, a 15-year Linux veteran named Graham Peacock.
Yeah, a great piece. And we matched that against a highly energized, fiercely divided public commentary forum.
Very divided.
Yeah, people have strong feelings. But our goal is to figure out why the world stubbornly resists an open source utopia.
Right. And to understand why people refuse to migrate, as the strategic auditor here, I think we first need to audit the cold, hard infrastructure of the digital landscape.
Mm-hmm. The ground we're actually walking on.
Exactly. Microsoft Windows didn't just, magically appear on every desk. It systematically cemented its place in our homes, our offices, starting way back in the mid-1980s.
Yeah, that's a long time ago now.
We are talking about nearly 40 years of sheer gravitational momentum.
And that momentum birthed an economic reality, right? One that entirely dictates hardware compatibility today. Peacock's article points out this really harsh truth for open source fans.
Which is?
Hardware vendors prioritize Windows simply because Microsoft is where the profit is.
Right. Follow the money.
Always. And we need to look at what that actually means mechanically for you as a user. When a company manufactures a piece of hardware, say an audio interface for music production or like a specialized commercial printer, they have to write software called a driver. And a driver is essentially a translation manual. It teaches the computer's operating system how to talk to the physical metal of that device.
And writing those translation manuals takes time and budget.
Oh, a lot of budget.
Right. So if you are a hardware manufacturer and you look at the market share, you are going to write the Windows translation manual first, second, and third.
Exactly. Writing one for Linux becomes this massive financial gamble that most companies just won't take.
And the user comments in our sources are just filled with people experiencing the fallout of this. There was a user named Mike who perfectly summarized it. He said, you install Windows, plug stuff in, and it works.
Simple as that.
Simple.
Yeah.
But you install Linux, plug stuff in, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to get it to work.
It's the whole plug and play versus plug and pray thing. Another user, Bob, explicitly notes that while he loves his Linux setup, he's a big fan. Getting something as mundane as an HP printer or a disk burner to function can turn into a multi-step, agonizing project.
Which is wild. And honestly, it places an unfair burden on the open source community because the Linux platform itself is incredibly mature.
Right.
It supports mainstream hardware like high-end graphics cards beautifully. But the moment you step outside that mainstream into niche tech, the lack of official manufacturer support creates a massive usability cliff.
It really does. You just fall right off.
So looking at this through my strategic auditor lens, I look at Windows less like a piece of software and more like the universal electrical grid in a house.
Oh, that's an interesting way to frame it.
Right, because when you go to the store and buy a new toaster, you don't call an electrician to verify if your specific house is compatible with that specific toaster.
No, of course not. You just plug it in.
You just plug it into the wall and assume it will heat your bread. When the grid is already built, nobody wants to rewire their house just to make toast.
Okay, it is a strong analogy, I'll give you that. But here is where I think it breaks down a bit.
Okay, tell me.
An electrical grid is standardized by public safety boards and governments for the collective good, right?
True.
But the computing standard we're talking about, it was won through a profit-driven corporate monopoly. We are kind of confusing a proprietary product with a fundamental utility.
Oh, wow. That is a critical distinction. Okay, I see your point. But still, if hardware compatibility is just a matter of missing translation manuals, why doesn't the massive global open source community just crowdsource better drivers and solve the problem?
Because the barrier isn't actually silicon or software.
It's not.
No. The real lock-in, the most powerful anchor keeping you on Windows, it happens inside the user's mind. And this is where we really have to decode the human legacy code in this session.
The psychological resistance.
Exactly. The resistance is profoundly psychological.
The psychological barrier of learning an entirely new digital environment. Because, I mean, an operating system isn't just an app you can swipe away, you know.
Not at all. It's a whole foundation.
Right. It forms the core architecture of your digital reality. Switching to Linux means abandoning decades of built-up mental models.
The decades.
And there's this incredibly sharp point raised in the forums by a user named John. He was talking about the file system itself.
Oh, yes, I remember this comment.
If you grew up using Windows, you understand data storage as isolated islands. You have the C drive, maybe a D drive, or, you know, a USB stick acting as an E drive. It is highly spatial and separated.
Right, and Linux fundamentally rejects that geography.
Completely.
Linux treats the entire computer, every drive, every external device as a single, unified, hierarchical tree starting from one root directory.
Which is so jarring if you aren't used to it.
Exactly. To a Windows user, changing that mental model is like waking up and finding out your kitchen is suddenly located inside your bathroom.
That's hilarious, but it's true. The muscle memory for keyboard shortcuts, the way you conceptualize where a file actually lives, it gets entirely upended.
And humans optimize for cognitive ease. A source commenter named Surendra provided a breakdown estimating that 80 to 90% of computer users are entirely non-technical.
Yeah, most people just want to get their work done.
Right. They want zero setup. They want to open the cardboard box, press the power button, and use whatever comes pre-installed. They do not want to open a command line terminal to troubleshoot an audio glitch.
Even if, as another user pointed out, artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT can now hold your hand through the process.
Right. Even with AI helping you, the cognitive load of simply operating the machine is perceived as too high.
And there is also this fascinating cultural context to this cognitive load that we found in the sources.
Oh, Vikram's comment.
Yes. Vikram highlighted that in developing economies, like India, the software ecosystem is so overwhelmingly dominated by Windows that Linux is completely absent from the mainstream consciousness.
It's just not there.
It is so unfamiliar that some users mistakenly equate it to malware.
Which is just staggering to think about. They see an unfamiliar free operating system that doesn't have the Microsoft logo, and they literally assume it must be a corrupt program designed to sabotage their hardware.
That is the ultimate proof of how deeply entrenched the Windows mental model is. If it's not Windows, it is perceived as dangerous.
It really is. So, speaking as the wisdom seeker here, we have to ask a deeper Gurukul 2.0 question.
Lay it on me.
If the open source community knows this is a massive psychological barrier, why don't they just market Linux better?
Right. Why not run a $1 billion retraining campaign?
Exactly. And the answer is because they fundamentally cannot afford to fight the psychological warfare Microsoft already waged, and more importantly, they don't want to.
They don't want to.
No. The Linux Foundation and the Free Software Foundation, they are not trying to sell you anything. Their ethos is about software freedom, community resilience, open architecture. Customer acquisition is a corporate metric, not an open source one.
Wow. Which means this widespread human preference for the familiar, it isn't just some happy accident for Microsoft.
Not at all.
It is the result of a highly engineered, deliberately constructed corporate ecosystem. And if the open source community isn't actively marketing to the masses, who is actively marketing against them?
Well, that leads us directly into the architecture of the walled garden.
Right, because Microsoft essentially weaponized education and the enterprise sector to guarantee generational loyalty.
We absolutely did.
Green Peacock's article notes that Microsoft maintains its dominance by building a high wall around its own exclusive and lucrative garden. And the foundation of that wall is poured directly into the classroom.
The statistics in the sources are staggering. Over 90% of schools in the UK rely on Windows and the Microsoft Office suite.
90%?
Yeah, we have to look at the mechanics of how that dominance was achieved. Microsoft didn't just stumble into the education sector.
No, it was a plan.
Decades ago, they aggressively pursued academic dominance by offering steep discounts to schools and universities.
cook them when they're young.
Exactly. They knew that if you take children whose minds are incredibly plastic and you hardwire their baseline understanding of digital productivity to a specific corporate product, you create lifelong consumers.
Right, because they don't learn the abstract concept of word processing. They learn Microsoft Word.
Microsoft Word specifically, yes.
And that education pipeline then feeds directly into the corporate world, creating this airtight, self-reinforcing loop.
Yeah.
Like the person listening to us right now, you might be listening to this on a work-issue Dell laptop.
Probably.
And you're probably thinking, I don't even have the admin rights to change my desktop background, let alone install a completely new operating system.
Yeah, IT has that locked down.
And that is exactly Microsoft's masterstroke. Companies standardize on Windows because IT departments need unified management and guaranteed vendor support.
So you use Windows at work.
Right. And when you go home, you want your personal computer to interface seamlessly with your professional life.
Yeah.
So you buy a Windows machine.
Professional lock-in is arguably the most stubborn barrier of all. A commenter named R3 points out the absolute stranglehold of industry-standard software suites.
Oh, this is a huge point in the forums.
Yeah, heavy-hitting professional tools, specifically Adobe Creative Cloud and Autodesk, they simply do not release native Linux versions.
Which is wild.
So if you are a professional video editor or an architectural engineer, you literally cannot do your job natively on Linux. You just can't.
Yeah, I know there are workarounds.
Yeah.
The sources mentioned a compatibility layer called Wine that allows Linux to run Windows applications.
Yeah, Wine. But think of Wine like a simultaneous interpreter at the United Nations.
Okay, how so?
It is actively listening to an Adobe application speak Windows and frantically translating it into Linux code in real time.
That sounds exhausting for the computer.
It is. And just like real-time spoken translation, nuances get lost, heavy tasks cause delays, and sometimes the application just completely crashes.
Right. And if your livelihood depends on a massive video file rendering perfectly for a client deadline, you are not going to rely on a patchy real-time interpreter.
Never. You are going to stay inside the walled garden where it is natively supported and safe.
Okay, hold on. If the walled garden is so impenetrable and the corporate ecosystem is this perfect, frictionless loop, how do you explain the absolute backlash to Windows 11?
Well,
because reading through these forum sources, users are furious.
They are very angry, yes.
Microsoft is enforcing incredibly strict hardware requirements and pushing forced AI features that users are actively rejecting. Doesn't that shatter the cognitive ease argument? I mean, if Windows is actively making the user experience harder...
It's a fair question.
We have a user named Gordon. His laptop is in perfect physical condition, but it won't run Windows 11 because of the install protections.
Right.
And another user, Dan, points out that perfectly functional Windows 10 laptops are being rendered functionally obsolete. So if old machines are literally being bricked by mandatory updates, why isn't this the ultimate catalyst for a mass digital migration?
You are right to spot those cracks. And for a specific subset of people, it is the catalyst.
Okay.
Gordon took that perfectly good Windows-rejected laptop and installed Google Flex OS.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, Flex OS is a lightweight operating system that essentially turns an old laptop into a giant Chromebook, right?
Exactly. It runs purely on web applications, so he gave it a new battery and brought it back to life.
Amazing.
And another user, Dave, transitioned to Linux Mint, which is a specific flavor of Linux explicitly designed to mimic the classic familiar layout of a Windows desktop to reduce that cognitive friction.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, and he's never looked back. So on an individual basis, the friction of Windows 11 absolutely sparks rebellion.
They find the edge of the garden and they just jump the wall.
Exactly. But it doesn't trigger a mass migration because of the scale of corporate inertia.
Ah, right. The enterprise side.
A hobbyist can spend a Saturday afternoon formatting a hard drive and installing Linux Mint. But a multinational corporation with 10,000 employees, standardized IT security protocols, and multi-million-dollar contracts with Adobe, they cannot.
The friction of throwing away old hardware is painful and expensive, sure.
Yes. But for the enterprise world, the friction of entirely migrating their core operating system and retraining thousands of non-technical employees is catastrophic. The pain of staying is still vastly cheaper than the pain of leaving.
Okay. But let's take a step back and look at the bigger strategic picture here.
Sure.
What if we were looking at this entire battlefield the wrong way?
How do you mean?
What if we reframe the traditional desktop war entirely? Because according to our sources, Linux actually already won the operating system war.
Ah,
You just bypassed the battlefield everyone was staring at.
The invisible victory. Everyone focuses on the consumer desktop market because it is the screen they look at every day. But while Linux didn't capture the traditional laptop space, it completely and utterly conquered the invisible infrastructure of the modern digital age.
Exactly. It runs the servers, it runs the global cloud computing infrastructure, it runs the supercomputers.
Think about it like a vehicle.
Okay.
Windows is the dashboard, the steering wheel, the heated leather seats. It is the part the driver actively touches and interacts with.
Right.
But Linux is the engine block, the transmission, the fuel lines. We obsess over the dashboard, but Linux is actually making the vehicle move.
That is such a good analogy. And the truth is, most people interact with Linux constantly without having any idea they're doing it.
All the time.
Commenters like Arian and Jordan highlighted this perfectly. Android, the most widely used mobile operating system on the planet, runs entirely on the Linux kernel.
Yep.
Your smart TV, Linux. The touchscreen kiosk where you order your fast food, Linux. The smartwatch tracking your heart rate, probably Linux.
It completely shifts the perspective of this Gurukul session. Linux didn't fail to win the desktop. It simply outgrew it.
It outgrew it.
As Graham Peacock eloquently points out, Linux wasn't designed to appease boardroom suit types driven by North Star metrics and quarterly earnings.
No.
It was forged by a community heavily reliant on collaboration to build functional, resilient digital architecture. The fact that it became the structural steel of the entire internet is a testament to the raw quality of the code, not the success of a marketing campaign.
Wow. So let's synthesize this digital stroll for our listeners. What is the core legacy code we've extracted today about this massive friction in digital migration? Why do we resist the open source utopia?
It really comes down to three interlocking pillars.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, the economics of hardware. Microsoft's first mover advantage built an ecosystem where compatibility is simply assumed, forcing niche hardware to ignore open source alternatives.
Right, the missing translation manuals.
Second, the deeply ingrained human habit that prioritizes cognitive ease. We fundamentally resist abandoning our mental geography, even if a new system is objectively freer or more secure.
We don't want the kitchen in the bathroom.
Exactly. And third, a brilliant generations-long ecosystem lock-in that begins by shaping the minds of children in elementary schools and ends in the unyielding inertia of the corporate enterprise sector.
It is an absolute fortress of habit and commerce. But as we wrap up this session, I want to leave you, everyone listening, with a final provocative thought.
Ooh, I love a good final thought.
It's a new angle to ponder that builds on the very foundation of this debate. We spent all this time talking about how Windows locked down the local hardware of the desktop, but there was a brilliant observation by a user named Numetheus.
Right, I saw that one.
They pointed out that modern computing is rapidly shifting away from local software entirely.
Everything is moving to the browser.
Right. You don't need to install Microsoft Word anymore. You just open Google Docs in a web tab. You don't install a heavy email client. You use Gmail. You don't even necessarily render video locally anymore. You use cloud-based rendering tools.
It's all in the cloud.
So if the entirety of your digital life, your work, your entertainment, your communication, if it all happens inside a web browser, the underlying operating system you're running locally starts to matter less and less.
The browser itself becomes the de facto operating system.
Precisely. If you just need a portal to the cloud, does it really matter if that portal is running on Windows, macOS, or Linux?
Not really.
Will the traditional desktop OS eventually become nothing more than a nostalgic piece of interface design? We spent 40 years living in Microsoft's house, but what happens to the mighty Windows legacy when the window itself disappears?
That is a profound question to walk away with. It suggests that the friction of migration might not be solved by convincing people to switch operating systems.
Yeah.
No, it might be solved by the operating system simply becoming irrelevant.
The ground is always shifting. And that concludes our Morning Walk with Murty Digital Stroll for today. Thank you so much for joining the Antaryami VA Academy's exploration. We encourage you to keep questioning the digital prisms through which you view the world. Until next time.